Chapter 7. The Trap. Friday came faster than I expected. All week I moved through my life like an actress in someone else's play. Mornings were peanut butter sandwiches, mismatched socks, reminders about Sadie's violin lesson. Afternoons were phone calls, donor meetings, and grant proposals that blurred into one another. Evenings were pasta dinners, homework help, the lullaby of dishes in the sink. From the outside, I looked like myself. But inside, the days ticked with the rhythm of a countdown clock. Noon Friday, noon Friday, noon Friday. The lawyer. On Tuesday, I met with Alyssa Grant, the lawyer I'd called. Her office overlooked the courthouse square, a tidy space with shelves lined in legal tomes and plants that looked better cared for than most pets. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything: Daniel, the photos, the envelope, the demand. The boy he claimed was mine. When I finished, she tapped a pen against her pad. "This is extortion," she said plainly. "If he contacts you again, save every message, every voicemail. If he shows up, document it. But I don't recommend paying him. Men like this don't go away. They just adjust the price." "What about the photos?" I asked. "If he shows them to Michael." She shook her head. "They're not illegal, and they don't prove anything beyond bad judgment from 20 years ago. You were 19. It was immoral, but not criminal. The worst fallout is social, not legal. Social." The word felt heavier than legal. "And the boy?" I whispered. "That's a separate matter," Alyssa said. "If you want answers, we can order a discreet DNA test. But be clear with yourself, Anna. Do you want the truth? Or do you want peace?" I left her office with a referral for a private investigator and the uneasy knowledge that those two things, truth and peace, rarely live in the same house. Rachel's fury. That night, Rachel sat cross-legged on my couch with cartons of pad thai and spring rolls spread across the coffee table. She listened as I told her about the diner, the envelope, the threat, the boy. When I finished, she slammed her chopsticks onto the takeout box. "Unbelievable. He's still the same parasite. He feeds on guilt and shame because it's free fuel." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "If I tell Michael, I risk shattering his trust. If I stay quiet, I'm lying. And if I pay, Daniel wins." Rachel leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Then don't pay. Don't feed him. Call his bluff. And if he comes after you harder, we'll burn him with every resource you've got now: lawyers, friends, a life that's nothing like the girl he knew." Her conviction was a flame I hadn't known I needed. "You think I can beat him?" I asked. She squeezed my hand. "You already did once. You survived him. That was the hard part. Now you just have to finish the story." The shadow. But Daniel didn't disappear. He multiplied. On Wednesday, Michael found a plain envelope in the mailbox. Inside was a photo of me at 19, sitting in Daniel's truck. No note this time, just the image, sharp enough to wound. "Do you know who would send something like this?" Michael asked, frowning at the photo as if it were a puzzle. I froze. My mouth went dry. "Maybe a prank?" I managed, my voice brittle. "Someone from college?" He studied it longer than I liked, then shook his head. "Cruel joke. Don't let it get to you." He tossed it into the recycling bin without ceremony. But I knew Daniel had found a way in. He wasn't just after me, he was infiltrating the very seams of my marriage. The boy. Thursday afternoon, the private investigator Alyssa recommended Mark Delaney. A man with a face like weathered stone slid a thin folder across her desk to me. Inside were details about Noah Hayes, 17 years old, high school junior, varsity baseball player, lives with his mother, Claire, in a rental house 2 towns over. There was no mention of me, no mention of adoption, no gaps that suggested secrets. By all records, Noah was Daniel and Claire's son. But the photos, his jawline, His mouth still haunted me. "Looks like Daniel's lying," Mark said. "Again." "Looks like," I echoed, though some part of me still twisted in doubt. "People like him," Mark continued. "They don't want truth. They want leverage. He dangles whatever you're most afraid of. Right now, that's this kid." I closed the folder, my hands trembling. Friday. Noon Friday arrived like a drumbeat. I sat in my car outside the diner again, the envelope of photos in the passenger seat. Rain tapped on the windshield, steady, insistent. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. 12:0. "Where are you?" Another buzz. "Don't be late." I didn't move. Alyssa's words replayed in my head. "Don't pay him. Don't feed him." At 12:10. Another message. "I guess your husband will find out instead." My stomach clenched. I pictured Michael at his office, opening an envelope, his steady world crumbling. I pictured my children hearing whispers at school, coming home with questions I couldn't answer. I started the car. I drove away. The visit. That night, after the kids were asleep, there was a knock at the door. Michael opened it, and there stood Daniel. Rain dripped from his jacket. His smile was thin, rehearsed. "Evening, Michael. I'm an old friend of Anna's. Thought I'd stop by." Michael glanced at me, confused. "Anna?" My blood turned to ice. Daniel's eyes glittered. "Don't worry. Just here to catch up." I stepped forward, voice shaking. "Leave." But Michael, kind man that he was, didn't yet sense the danger. "It's late," he said politely. "Maybe another time." Daniel tilted his head. "Sure. Another time." He pressed an envelope into Michael's hand, winked at me, and walked back into the rain. Michael frowned at the envelope. "What was that about?" "Don't open it," I blurted. He stared at me, bewildered. "Anna, what is going on?" And just like that, the trap snapped shut. Chapter 8. The Choice. Michael stood in the foyer with the envelope in his hand like it was an animal he wasn't sure would bite. Behind him, our living room glowed with the ordinary light of a Friday evening lamps on. A basket of clean laundry waiting to be folded. The TV paused on a nature documentary Sadie had abandoned mid-sea turtle. "Anna," he said softly, "what is this?" Rain gathered on the threshold in tiny silver beads. I could hear the dishwasher humming in the kitchen, a domestic metronome that suddenly felt obscene. "Please don't open it," I said. "Not yet." He looked at my face, then at the envelope, then back at me as if trying to triangulate an answer. "Who is he?" "Someone I knew a long time ago," I said, and felt the past unclasp its jaws. Michael's eyes darkened with worry, not anger. That, somehow, made it harder. "Is this about before we met?" "Yes." He nodded once, as if bracing. "Then let's look at it together." He slid a finger under the flap and drew out the contents. A photo of me at 19, half in shadow, stepping out of Daniel's truck, his hand at the small of my back. Another photo at a diner, my chin tilted, my mouth open mid-laugh. The last item. A photocopy of a motel receipt with Daniel's signature and a date that might as well have been stamped on my ribcage. No note. No explanation. Just the math of humiliation. Image plus. Assumption. Damage. Michael stared at the table. "This was before us," he said, as if reminding himself in order to forgive me. "Yes." My throat tightened. "I should have told you years ago. Not the pictures, God. I didn't know about the pictures, but the story. I swallowed. I thought I'd buried it." He sank onto the ottoman like his knees couldn't hold him. "Did he send this?" "Yes." "Why?" I gave him the cleanest version of the truth I could. The gala, the balcony, the envelope, the diner, the demand. I did not strip it to bone. There are mercies even in confession. But I told him enough to show the shape of the threat. Michael listened without interrupting, hands clasped, jaw working. When I finished, he closed his eyes. He's extorting you. Yes. And you were 19. Yes. He exhaled, the breath of a man who has learned something painful but survivable. When he looked at me again, there was a question he was ashamed to voice. He asked it anyway. Do you still feel anything for him? No, I said. And the word rang clear. What I feel is the residue of fear. The kind you get from a near miss on the highway that you remember for years. He nodded once, as if accepting the currency I was offering. Okay. Then, after a beat, we go to the police. I've spoken with a lawyer, I said. She says paying him won't solve it. Document everything. Don't engage, except through counsel. Michael's mouth twitched, half relief that I'd already moved, half hurt that I'd moved without him. Thank you, he said anyway. I sat beside him. There's more. He braced again. Tell me. He claims there's a boy, 17, that he could be mine. Michael blinked, and for the first time that evening, the room shifted tables and lamps, sliding a quarter inch in some internal earthquake. Could he? I don't think so, I said carefully. The investigator pulled records. He's listed as Daniel and Claire's son. No gaps. But Daniel, he knows where to press. Michael stood and paced once, twice. Then he stopped in front of me and put his hands on my shoulders like a benediction. If we need a DNA test for your piece, we do a DNA test. If we need a protective order, we get one. If we need to tell the kids something age-appropriate, we do that. Together. His voice steadied on the last word. Together. Tears rose hot and uninvited. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm angry, he said. Honest and gentle in the same breath. But not at you. At him. For walking into our house and trying to rearrange the furniture. He lifted the photos, stacked them, and slid them back into the envelope. He doesn't get to curate our history. The front door camera pinged on Michael's phone, ghostly blue light in his palm. He glanced down, jaw tightening. He's still outside, he said. I'll call Alyssa, I said, reaching for my cell. Michael's hand covered mine. I'll call the police. He did. We waited by the window as the squad car pulled up. Its quiet presence a kind of spell. The officers spoke to Daniel under the glow of the street lamp, heads bent, rain pinning their shoulders with silver needles. After a few minutes, Daniel turned, offered the smallest of mock salutes toward our house, and walked away into the wet dark. The officers came to our door. Michael handled it his voice level, the kind of firm politeness he used in depositions. When they left, he locked the door, checked it twice, then looked at me. The fury in his eyes wasn't loud. It was surgical. We're not paying him, he said. I know. And if he contacts you again, you tell me first. I will, I said. This time, the promise felt like a plank I was grateful to stand on. Claire. The next morning, I dialed a number I never thought I'd call again. Claire Hayes answered on the third ring. Her voice had roughened with years and cigarettes or grief, maybe both. Who is this? Claire, it's Anna Reed. Silence. I imagined her standing in a small kitchen with a phone pressed to her cheek, a coffee going cold on the counter, light falling in rectangles through blinds. What do you want? She said. I want to talk about Daniel, I said, and about Noah. You don't get to say his name. I know. I swallowed. But I think he's using your son as leverage. Another silence. This one, a knife glint. Where are you? We met at a park halfway between our towns. Saturday morning. Dog walkers. Joggers. Two boys practicing free throws with the hopeful thump of teenagers who believe time is elastic. Claire arrived in a charcoal coat that had seen better winters. She looked at me like a problem she had already solved and wished she hadn't. Make it quick, she said. Daniel is trying to extort me, I began. He sent photos from when I was 19. He came to my house. He said Noah could be mine. Is that why you called? She asked. To confess a child 2 decades late? No, I said. To ask you to help me shut him down. Her eyebrow arched. And why would I do that? Because it's the right thing for Noah. And because it's the last thing Daniel expects us, on the same side. Something flickered in her eyes. Not softness. Not yet. Recognition, maybe, of a tactical truth. She looked out at the basketball court, where one boy shouted, "Cash!" after a clean shot. He's been worse lately, she said, so quietly I almost missed it. Lost jobs, drinking more, picking fights with ghosts. Noah thinks his dad is complicated. I'm running out of synonyms. I hired a lawyer, I said. There's a private investigator. If you'd consent to a DNA test, we could end that line of attack. She snorted. You think a piece of paper will end it? Honey, that man can turn a weather report into a threat. I know. I paused. But it changes the terrain. Claire studied me for a long beat. Noah is my son, she said finally. I raised him. I know what months look like. But if a test shuts Daniel up, she exhaled through her nose. I'll talk to Noah. He's almost a man. I don't get to decide for him anymore. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. She shifted her gaze back to me. You were 19. He was a married man. That is not a fair fight. Her mouth tightened. But you still blew a hole through my life, and I'm allowed to keep disliking you. I don't expect forgiveness, I said. I only want to stop him. She nodded once. Then don't blink. She turned to leave. After a few steps, she stopped. He told me you were different, she said without looking back. He always says that about the last one. It echoed the first time she'd said it 2 decades ago on my porch. The line had aged badly. It smelled of mildew and recycled lies. Somehow, that helped. Paper shields. By Monday, Alyssa had a temporary restraining order drafted and filed. A judge signed it, granting distance and silence on paper the law's version of a moat. It wouldn't fix everything, but it gave the police something firmer to stand on than our fear. Mark, the investigator, handed me a small digital recorder and a list of simple instructions. Save every message. Don't respond. If contact is unavoidable, say as little as possible and let him talk himself into a corner. That afternoon, a text arrived from the familiar unknown number. You made a mistake. We could have been civilized. Then, 2 minutes later, TikTok. I forwarded both to Alyssa and to the officer who'd come to our door. No replies. As agreed. Paper shields, digital breadcrumbs, a perimeter drawn in careful lines. At dinner, Michael told the kids an edited truth. Someone from Mom's past has been bothering her, he said, steady, calm. If anyone you don't know approaches you or says they're a friend of ours, you find a trusted adult and call us right away. Evan nodded, jaw tight. Sadie asked if she could still go to her friend's house on Wednesday. The ordinariness of the question cracked something inside me in a good way. Yes, I said. I'll drive you. After they'd gone upstairs, Michael and I sat at the table, not touching the last of the pasta. We can get through this, he said. We will, I answered, and hoped the future was listening. The test Claire texted midweek. Noah agrees. He says if it shuts his father up, he's game. She added a time and an address for a private clinic with a receptionist who didn't blink at the word discreet. I went alone. The nurse was gentle in the practiced way of people who do one hard thing all day and understand the power of silence. Inside the small room, Noah sat in a folding chair, tall, thin, hat in his lap, eyes that might have been Daniel's if they had been kinder. Claire stood behind him, a hand on his shoulder. Hi, Noah said, polite, Wary, boy, brave. This is weird. It is, I agreed, forcing a smile. Thank you for doing it. It's fine, he said, and glanced up at his mother. We told him to stay away today. Good, I said. The swabs were quick. Names coded into numbers. Vials sealed with crisp clicks. A chain of custody forms signed in triplicate. The bureaucracy of truth. In the parking lot, Claire lit a cigarette and blew smoke sideways. You'll get the result at the same time we do, she said. Whatever it says. I don't want him near my son. Neither do I said. Noah looked between us. Some calculation moving behind his eyes that had nothing to do with genetics. If he gives you trouble, he said to me, tell me the date and the place. I'll hit balls at his car. I laughed despite myself. Deal. He grinned, the first real smile I'd seen in days. For a second, he looked like any kid on any diamond on any American afternoon. Then he slid into Claire's car, pulled his cap low, and they drove away. The call before the storm. That night, our house felt briefly normal. Homework, dishes, a sitcom Michael liked and I tolerated. I made tea, the old ceremony of heat and waiting. When my phone rang after 10, I jumped. Unknown number. Don't, Michael said from the couch. It could be Alyssa, I answered, and put it on speaker. A voice I didn't recognize spoke, taut with panic. Is this Anna Reed? Yes. This is Officer Reyes with the county police. We're calling because there's been an accident on Route 17 near the old overpass. A vehicle registered to Daniel Hayes lost control in the rain. We're securing the scene. My hand tightened around the counter's edge. Is he? We can't release details yet, the officer said. But we need to ask. When did you last have contact with Mr. Hayes? Michael stood, remote falling to the rug with a soft thud. The room felt suddenly overlit, too sharp. Not since the restraining order was served. I managed. Thank you, Officer Reyes said. We'll follow up in the morning. The line went dead. Michael stared at me, the questions flooding and receding and leaving behind something I recognized all too well. The knowledge that a storm you didn't call can still choose your house. We stood very still in the kitchen. The clock over the stove marked a second, then another, until the silence turned into a shape we could walk around. Tomorrow, Michael said quietly, we'll know more. I nodded. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled the long, low kind that says the worst of it hasn't arrived yet. I thought of Claire, of Noah, of a road slick with rain. I thought of a boy's jawline and a man's ledger and a file folder on our pantry shelf. And I thought, not for the first time, the past doesn't end. It changes form. Chapter 9. The Final Night. Morning came in pieces, coffee gone cold on the counter, a shirt I couldn't remember buttoning, the clock on the stove that insisted it was only 7. 12 when my bones swore we'd already lived a week. Michael moved carefully around me as if we were both carrying a full glass. At 8:03 a.m., my phone rang. Officer Reyes. Miss Reed, we need you to come down to the station to make a statement about Mr. Hayes. Your attorney is welcome. I'll be there, I said, and texted Alyssa one word. Now. The statement, the precinct smelled like disinfectant, paper, and yesterday's rain. Alyssa met me at the door in a blazer that meant business and compassion in equal measure. In interview 2, Officer Reyes clicked on a small recorder and asked for the basics. My name, the restraining order, the last time I'd seen or heard from Daniel. I answered the way truth sounds when you've practiced it in your head all night flat, precise, no flourishes. Do you know if he had enemies? Reyes asked. Enemies? I repeated. Debt came to mind first. Self-sabotage came a close second. He owed people, I said. And he loved a lit match. Reyes nodded, made a note, His car left the road near the overpass. It's a dangerous curve in weather like last night's. A pause. We'll run the usual checks. Is he? I began, then stopped myself. He's alive, Reyes said. For now. Critical condition at Street Ann's. Alyssa's hand found my elbow under the table. A silent breathe. Will you need Miss Reed further today? She asked. Not at this time, Reyes replied. We may follow up. We stepped into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed like a nervous system. You don't owe him anything, Alyssa said. Hospital or not. Claire, I said. Does she know? She will, Alyssa said. Let the police handle notification. I nodded like a person who had agreed to be reasonable. ICU. By noon, I was standing at the ICU doors of Street Ann's with a visitor sticker that felt like a lie and a truth stuck to my sweater. I told the nurse at the desk my name. She didn't flinch. Family only, she said gently. His wife is in the waiting area. Of course she was. Claire sat with her coat folded on her lap like a vow she wasn't going to break. When she saw me, her mouth tightened. But she didn't tell me to leave. The police called, she said. They said he asked for you. I don't. The sentence failed and I started again. Why would he ask for me? Because you always were his favorite mirror, she said, without cruelty. He liked how he looked in your eyes. We sat in a silence padded only by the beeping and breathing of machines down the hall. After a while she said, Noah's at school. I didn't tell him yet. I figured there's no reason to ruin a math test. I'm sorry, I said. You keep being sorry, she murmured. It never does what you want it to. A doctor stepped in, face composed, hands folded. Mrs. Hayes? He's stable enough for a short visit. 10 minutes. Claire stood, wobbling once and steadying herself. At the doorway, she paused and glanced back at me. Come. He asked for you, and I'm in the mood to grant wishes he won't like. Inside, the room was soft with machine sounds, ventilator hush, monitor ticks, a synthetic heartbeat layered over whatever was left of his own. Daniel looked smaller, not because the bed was big, but because the story was. Bruises bloomed under gauze. An IV threaded into the back of his hand like a confession. His eyes opened when he heard us. For a second, I saw the man I'd first met, the angle of that grin, the spark that mistook hunger for charm. Then pain replaced it, and he was just a person laboring under gravity. Anna, he rasped. I stood at the foot of the bed. Claire moved to the side and crossed her arms. You asked for me, I said. Couldn't let it end like that. He winced, breath clipping. Like what? I kept my voice low. With you at my door? With envelopes like grenades? He made a sound that thought it was a laugh. Always. Good with images. His gaze slid to Claire. You? Still here? I'm here to hear you say something worth the oxygen, she said. He swallowed. I was going to stop. Claire snorted. Right. Daniel lifted a hand a few inches, as if he could reach into the drawer by his bed without moving. Jacket, he whispered, eyes on me. Inside pocket. I glanced at Claire. She gave the faintest shrug that meant, do it. I found his jacket folded over the chair. In the inner pocket, a small padded envelope addressed in block letters to Michael Carter. My mouth went dry. What is this? A letter, he said. Wrote it. Last night. Was going to put it in your box. Before I changed my mind about all of it. I looked at Claire. Her face didn't change. Read it, she said. My hands shook the way they do when old weather moves through you. Michael, you don't know me. That's on purpose. I'm not worth knowing. 20 years ago, I made a mess and pulled a kid into it. She was 19. That's on me. I took pictures I shouldn't have taken and kept things I should have burned. Recently, I used them to get attention and maybe money. That's also on me. I told lies about a boy because I wanted leverage. He is not hers. He's not mine either. Claire told me the truth a long time ago. I didn't want it. I don't expect forgiveness. I expect to be forgotten. Do not punish Anna for what I did to her when she was still trying to figure out her own name. D. Hayes. The words were not poetic. They were not even admirable. But they were plain. And plain can be holy when you've been living with performance. You're lying, Claire said, reflexive, exhausted. Not this time, he whispered. You said Noah, I began, and couldn't finish. Not yours, he said. Wanted you? Scared. A ragged breath. Don't know why I wanted that. Maybe because I'm always scaring myself. Who is his father? Claire demanded, as if the question could retroactively right a ship. Daniel's gaze unfocused a little. You told me, he murmured. After. Said it wasn't my business. I agreed. A slow blink. I wasn't much for business. Claire stared at him like she could force the rest of the sentence out of his skin. It didn't come. I'm giving this to Michael, I said, sliding the envelope into my bag. Not because it fixes anything, but because it's a door I can close. Do it, Daniel said. Close things. His eyes flickered toward the monitor as if he could negotiate its pace. I was wrong, he managed. About you. About a lot. Thought power was breathing underwater longer than anyone else. Turns out, I was always drowning. Claire's jaw clenched. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't even justice. It was a line in a ledger finally written in the same ink as the debt. The nurse stepped in and lifted her palm the way you lift a stop sign. That's it, she said softly. He needs to rest. We moved toward the door. At the threshold, Daniel said my name again. I turned. Tell the boy, he said, to hit a home run. I'll tell him, I said, and meant it for reasons I didn't yet understand. The curve on, the way out of Street Anne's, rain gathered itself again in the corners of the sky. Claire lit a cigarette under the overhang and stared at the wet parking lot like it owed her an answer. I waited beside her, not to be kind, but because moving felt like misplacing something. He would have found some other angle, she said finally, even with that letter. Even with a judge. He always did. Maybe, I said. Maybe not this time. She laughed once, short and without humor. You and your maybes. We parted with a nod that meant we had survived the same weather and had no intention of swapping umbrellas. I drove home with the letter in my bag, the wipers keeping time with thoughts I couldn't file. At a red light, my phone rang. Mark Delaney, the investigator. I answered on speaker. You near a TV? He asked. No. Turn on channel 7 when you are. Tell me. He exhaled. They're saying it was the curve and the rain. No sign of tampering. No other vehicles. He took it too fast. That's all. That's never all, I said. No, Mark agreed. But it's enough for now. Thank you, I said, and hung up. I pulled into our driveway and sat for a moment listening to the engine click itself cool. The house looked like itself, brick, windows, a welcome mat that had collected 3 small leaves. Inside, the ordinary would be waiting. Homework sheets, a water bottle under the couch, and the hum of the dishwasher starting its later life as background music. I took the letter out of my bag and turned it over in my hands. It wasn't absolution. It was ballast. It weighed the story toward one side away from the open mouth of the past. Michael met me at the door. I held the envelope out. It's for you, I said. From him. He read it at the kitchen island while I watched the steam rise from the kettle. When he finished, he set the paper down very carefully, as if it might break and cut him. He told the truth, Michael said. He looked at me. Not the whole truth, but enough. Yes. He exhaled like a man stepping onto a dock after a long crossing. Then we believe what matters and we ignore the rest. Can it be that simple? I asked. No, he said. But we can treat it like it is until we're strong enough for complicated. I smiled. A small thing that felt like a hinge moving without squeaking. The DNA results will come soon, I said. And whatever they say, he answered, they won't change who lives in this house. Outside, thunder rolled again, farther off this time, not gone, but willing to have a conversation instead of a fight. I texted Claire. He wrote Michael. He told the truth about Noah. A minute later, 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, good. After dinner, I stood at the sink and watched the last light fold itself into evening. I thought about a curved road and a man who mistook momentum for freedom. I thought about a boy on a baseball diamond and the way joy can still arc through a body no matter who signed your birth certificate. I thought about 19 and 40, about the distance between them being the only miracle that ever mattered. When the kettle clicked off, I poured water over a tea bag and let it steep the way you let a new future quietly, patiently, without poking it to see if it's done yet. The phone chimed once more. A new email. Street Ann's Medical Center, patient status update. I opened it. One sentence. Daniel Hayes passed at 8:47 p.m. I stood very still in my kitchen as the world shifted by a quarter inch again, then settled. There wasn't relief. There wasn't grief, exactly. There was a feeling I didn't have a name for yet, like the sound of a train you didn't get on moving away into a night you no longer needed. Michael came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders, his chin in my hair. Our domestic anchor. Come to bed, he said after a time. I will, I answered. In a minute. I carried my mug to the window and watched the rain find its old ways down the glass. Somewhere, a boy I didn't raise would swing a bat again and aim for a sky that didn't care who cheered. Somewhere, a woman who had been my accuser and my ally in the same hour would sleep without checking the lock twice. And in our house, the past exhaled still there, still itself, but finally willing to sit in a chair and let the present have the couch. Chapter 10. The Aftermath Street. Ann's listed Daniel's status as deceased, and the town 2 states away from Willow Creek, but identical in its appetite, took one long breath and turned the page. For us, pages stuck. 2 mornings later, the envelope from the clinic arrived. Plain white. No drama in the font. I held it the way you hold a bird that might panic. Michael set 2 mugs of coffee on the table and sat beside me. Ready? No, I said, and opened it anyway. A single sheet. Numbers translated into sentences. Probability of relationship. 0%. The kind of truth that is heavy only because you carried the fear so long. I passed it to Michael. He exhaled, the soft release of a man whose house has been measured and found plumb. My phone buzzed. Claire. You get it? Yes, I typed. Negative. 3 dots then. Good. Meet? Same park. Noon. The park. Again. The day was bright, unfairly so. People threw frisbees. A toddler in a dinosaur hoodie shouted "rawr" at a pigeon and scared only himself. On the court, 2 boys practiced free throws. The thump of the ball was a metronome for hope. Claire arrived wearing sunglasses and a coat that wanted another winter. She didn't sit. Neither did I. So that's dead, she said. One less bone for him to gnaw. Yes. She slipped off her glasses and wiped them on her sleeve. Her eyes were red. Not from crying, she'd done that already, but from the kind of tired grief produces when it's run out of tricks. I'm not a confessional woman, she said. I don't like remorse unless it's useful. But you keep showing up, and that feels like a bill worth paying. So here at Island, I braced without meaning to. Noah's father isn't Daniel, she said. You read that in the numbers. What the numbers won't tell you is who he Island. I think you deserve to hear it from me, and not from some mouth that loves the echo. She turned her face toward the court. The summer after your summer after you and I had that scene on your porch. After the town chewed both our names, Daniel disappeared for a while. Came back, meaner. I started the paperwork for legal separation. Met with a lawyer to understand the shape of my life without him. A pause. She didn't look at me. She watched the boys shoot. Your father, she said. And the words dropped between us like a tool someone forgot to put away. William Reed. He wasn't my lawyer, conflict of interest would have been too obvious for even me, but we crossed paths more than once through the process. He was kind in that careful way smart men are when they know kindness is currency. We were both raw. You were 19 and radioactive. He was furious at the world in a quiet suit. Silence spread its wings. It was brief, she said. Stupid. Not even an affair, more like the part of the storm where the wind stops and you think you can hear yourself make a choice. We slept together twice. Then we stopped. I told him I wouldn't wreck another family to fix mine. I found out I was pregnant 6 weeks later. The world blinked. The thump of the basketball went on, indifferent, like the heart of a person who hasn't heard the news yet. I tasted metal. Did he know? She shook her head. No. I told Daniel first, because that was the triage that made sense. He surprised me. He said he'd raise the baby as his, that it would make us solid. I let him believe it because I wanted the story to end somewhere that looked like a house. Later, when we tried again and failed again, I told him the truth. He didn't want it. Men like him prefer a good fiction to a bad fact. Why are you telling me now? She rested the sunglasses back on her nose, armor returning to its post. Because he's dead. Because the boy is nearly a man. Because you came to me not with appetite, but with a wish to end appetite. And because I would rather you hate me for the right reasons than keep loving the wrong ghosts. I pressed my fingernails into my palm until little half-moons appeared. My father's face leaped through time, the set jaw, the careful tie, the way shame sat on him like a custom coat. 100 small moments lurched into a different light. The brittle dinners, the late nights at the office, the way my mother set a mug down a little too hard sometimes, and then apologized to the table. I had always believed I was the match. Maybe I was only the first smoke. You don't have to tell him, Claire said, reading accurately the theater behind my eyes. I'm not here to detonate your family on a delay. I'm here to say that men make choices in the wake of girls' mistakes, and those choices belong to them. And my mother? I asked. Uselessly, already knowing the answer. Ask her, she said. She's the only one who can give you her version. We stood a while, the way people do when they realize the horizon is farther than advertised. On the court, one boy shouted, "Cash!" after a perfect shot. The ball whispered through, net saying yes. Claire turned to go, then paused. He told me, once, that you were different, she said, a smile that was not unkind tugging at her mouth. I think I finally understand what he meant. You're the only one of us who kept choosing forward. She left. I let the statement sit there, not to feed on it, just to witness it. Then I walked to my car and sat with my hands on the wheel until my knuckles quit clenching. Martha! My mother's kitchen smelled like lemon oil and a lifetime of trying. The curtains she'd sewn herself in 1992 still hung a small insistence that not everything has to be replaced to be clean. She looked smaller, or maybe I had finally stopped being a child inside this room. Mom, I said, and the word felt both soft and heavy. I need to ask you something. She wiped her hands on a towel and folded it carefully, aligning the corners as if a good edge could hold time. I know, she said. I blinked. You know what? That there are questions you should have asked me a long time ago and didn't, she said. That I should have told you anyway and didn't. We sat at the table where middle school science projects had been planned, and algebra had been wept over, and pies had been cooled. She poured tea, The sound was a ceremony. For a moment, we drank as if tea could be a bridge. "Did you know about Claire?" I asked. There was no way to lace it with mercy. Tears rose in her eyes and didn't fall. "Not then," she said. "Later. I knew later." "How much later?" "A year," she said. "Maybe 2. Time in those days felt like a hallway where every door led to the same room." I waited. "He told me finally," she said. "Not out of courage. Out of exhaustion. He said it was after everything with you. That he had been unmoored. That she was an accident, someone else in the storm." Those were the words, Anna. Someone else in the storm. I wanted to throw a chair through a window, and then I wanted to hold him because I could see he was also drowning. Both desires felt like betrayal of myself and of you. "Why did you stay?" I asked. Not accusing, truly asking. "Because leaving felt like breaking a bone no doctor in town would set," she said simply. "Because I loved him, even when love was not the verb I would have chosen. Because I loved you, and I thought a roof with holes was better than open sky." We sat inside the fact like a small, temporary shelter. "Is Noah," I began, and didn't finish. She shook her head. "I don't know. I didn't ask. I didn't want dates. I wanted to survive the week. I have the truth," I said. "About Noah." She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for not telling you sooner, for thinking I could keep you safe by keeping the math hidden." We held hands across the lemon-polished table. Her palm was smaller than I remembered, but the skin still had the same map, the lifeline that bends, the fate line that insists. When we let go, the echo of our touch stayed on the wood like the print of a glass in summer. "William." My father answered the door in his careful sweater, the one he wore to look softer. His hair had thinned, his jaw hadn't. The house smelled like books and good intentions. "Anna," he said, a question tucked inside my name. "We need to talk," I answered. He stood aside. The living room had changed over the years, new rug, different couch, but the portrait of a younger me still hung on the wall, like an indictment and a benediction. "I saw Claire," I said. "I know about Noah." He sat as if his knees forgot, how not with collapse, with surrender. He covered his mouth with his hand and left it there. A second mask. "I'm not here to ruin you," I said, and realized I meant it. "I'm here because the story you let grow in silence grew teeth." He nodded, once. The hand lowered. "It was after everything," he said. "I told myself I was angry, but that's not right. I was brittle. She was there. We were both the wrong kind of hungry." He looked at the portrait of me on the wall. "I thought I could hold everyone together by holding my breath." "Mom knew," I said. He shut his eyes. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I had already failed you once," he said. "Because I thought the least I could do was carry the second failure alone." We sat with that between us, a shared animal that finally lay down. "I don't need you to apologize for 20 years in one sentence," I said. "I need you to tell me you know the shape of the harm." "I do," he said. And when he looked at me, I saw the man who had taught me how to ride a bike and the boy who had never learned how to fall without bracing with his face. "I am sorry." We didn't hug. Some distances are bridges you don't rush across. You test each plank. The field. A week later, beneath a sky that made generous promises, I stood at the edge of a baseball diamond with Michael, Claire, and a space between us that was not unfriendly, just honest. Noah came up to bat hat low. Eyes narrowed the way boys look when they're about to do something true. Before the game, I had caught him near the dugout. "He asked me to tell you something," I said. "Who?" "Daniel." Noah's mouth tightened not cruelly, in self-defense. "What?" "Hit a home run," I said. His words, not mine. He rolled his eyes, but a smile slipped out. "That would require the pitcher to cooperate." "Make him," I said. Now he squared up. The first pitch strike. The second foul, a bright line that kissed the chain link. The third, he found it. The crack was the sound of a clean decision. The ball arced, not forever, but long enough. Outfielders turned and ran, and then stopped. The fence didn't matter. He rounded first, second, third. At home, he stomped the plate as if he were making a promise to the earth. His teammates howled. Boys are allowed volume where women are permitted only tidy tears. He glanced toward the sideline, just briefly, and in that glance was the whole messy ledger. A man who was gone, a woman who had stayed, another woman who had been both mirror and match. He lifted his chin once. Not gratitude, not defiance recognition. Claire exhaled. "Cash," she said, deadpan, and we both laughed. Michael's hand found mine. "Forward," he said into my hair. "Forward," I agreed. In the distance, a church bell marked an hour nobody needed to name. Somewhere inside me, a 19-year-old girl put down the last box from a life she'd outgrown and closed the door. Not gently, not cruelly, just closed it. Closing reflection. When I look back on that summer at 19, I don't see romance anymore. I don't see adventure or passion. I see a girl who mistook hunger for love, danger for attention, and recklessness for freedom. That affair didn't just wound me. It splintered my family. My parents aged years in months. My mother carried shame like an uninvited guest in her kitchen. My father tried to manage the wreckage with silence and made his own mistakes that seeded new grief. For a long time, I told myself Daniel Hayes destroyed my family. And he did. He struck the match. No question. But fire needs fuel. What really destroyed us was silence. Secrets passed hand to hand like hot stones no one dared to drop. My silence about him. My parents' silence about each other. Claire's silence about Noah. We all thought hiding the truth was the merciful choice. Instead, it multiplied. What I learned about love. Real love isn't loud. It isn't reckless. It doesn't come wrapped in motel keys and half-true promises. Real love is my husband, Michael, standing in our kitchen with photographs that could have burned us and saying, "Together." Real love is him flossing his teeth and still finding a way to ask, "Are you okay?" Real love is ordinary, and that ordinariness is the miracle. I once believed excitement mattered more than steadiness. That belief nearly cost me everything. Now I know. Steadiness is what saves you. What I learned about family. Families are not destroyed by a single mistake. They're destroyed when no one is brave enough to speak after the mistake. My mother could have left. She didn't. She stayed, not because she was weak, but because she believed a roof with holes was still better than open sky. My father could have confessed sooner. He didn't. And yet, when I confronted him, he admitted what he had done not cleanly, not heroically, but honestly. I thought the affair was the only storm. It wasn't. It was just the first crack that showed us how thin our walls really were. The truth is, we survived not because we were strong, but because we finally stopped pretending. What I learned about secrets don't stay buried. They wait. They lurk in boxes of photographs, in motel receipts, in DNA reports, in the eyes of children who look like echoes. They return, sometimes decades later, knocking at your door in the rain. I believed silence would protect the people I loved. Instead, it gave Daniel every weapon he ever needed. The day I told Michael the truth, even in its messy, incomplete form, was the day the ground stopped shaking beneath me. The secret lost its power because I no longer carried it alone. What I learned about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not excusing. It's not rewriting the story to make it prettier. Forgiveness is recognizing that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I don't forgive Daniel for what he did to me. I don't forgive him for what he did to Claire or Noah. But I do forgive myself for being 19 and naive, for needing to be seen, for surviving in the only ways I knew how. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a gift you give the other person. It's a gift you give yourself when you're ready to stop bleeding. Moving forward. When Noah hit that baseball out of the park, I thought about Daniel's last words. Tell the boy to hit a home run. And for the first time, I realized he hadn't been talking about the game. He'd been talking about life, about taking a swing at something bigger than yourself and letting it fly, even if you don't know where it'll land. But Noah's home run didn't belong to Daniel. It belonged to Noah. It belonged to Claire. It belonged to a boy who is almost a man, who will write his own story, not inherit ours. The past doesn't vanish. It sits at the edges, like a shadow in the room. But it doesn't get to drive anymore. My family, Michael, Evan, Sadie, deserves a mother who lives in the present, not a ghost who haunts herself. And that's what I choose. Forward. Final words to you. If you've listened this far, maybe it's because some part of my story brushed against yours. Maybe you've lived with a secret. Maybe you've carried a mistake so heavy you thought silence was the only way to survive it. Please, listen. Silence doesn't save. Speaking does. Telling the truth even when it shakes the walls is the only way the house stays standing. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so we can keep telling the stories that remind us we're not alone in our mistakes, in our grief, in our survival. Because secrets may destroy families, but stories, the honest kind, can rebuild them. Enjoyed this story? Like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Leave a comment if you liked it, your feedback means a lot.